Alright guys, the garage is empty. So what does that mean? Well, it means that I've been distracted with a lot of things here for a while. At first, my old air compressor died, and I had to replace it with that guy. So that set me back a while, kept me busy for a while. That is finished. It's under pressure, everything's hooked up, it's working like it should be. And then we had issues with the four-wheeler that I wanted to resolve. If you've watched the previous video on the Big Bear 350, you'll know that we found a bad pickup coil on the stator. That is taken care of. It's running like it should be. There'll probably be some additional projects with that thing here in the coming days. I'm going to replace the swing arm boot. I also think I might have a loose universal joint back there in the swing arm someplace. We'll try and get those things taken care of as well, but that doesn't have to be a priority right now. So what does all this mean? Well, what it means is today is the day. It's time. It's time to get back on Project Frankenstroke. Now the weather is kind of unreliable right now. It's a few days before Christmas. It's not very warm outside. It's not snowing currently, but it is rainy and wet and just kind of miserable for being outside. So I think we're going to move Frankenstroke inside, which may also serve to keep me a little more motivated to make some progress. So today is the day. Frank gets to go in the garage. We're going to get to work on this thing. This project needs to be wrapped up. I need to get this thing done. So let's get to work. Well, there we go. It's in. It's not exactly where I want it, but moving a truck with no brakes and no engine and no steering wheel, it's not as easy as you would think. At any rate, it's inside. It can be dry and out of the wind. And I've started making a little list of things to do. Just a little list. There's a lot to be done here, but my hope is now that I've got this thing inside, I'll be a little more faithful about pecking away at it. I can't use the mental excuse that it's cold or it's windy or it's raining or snowing or whatever. I have to just get out here and peck away at it. That's how these projects get done. You got to do little things. There's a lot of little things. So my hope is this will allow me to get out here and do some little things. But I think first things I'm going to do, might stick the floor jack under this thing and try and push it that way a little bit. It's kind of tight over here, getting to the toolbox. Try to get it over a foot or so. Should be pretty easy on the concrete here, even though it's all cracked and broken. Move it over a little bit, and then I think the first things I'm going to do is try to get inside the cab. And I don't know if I'll pull the seat right now. I don't know if I'll bother stripping the interior out of it right now. It's not great weather for cleaning that stuff and having it dry in less than a coon's age. So I may just go ahead and bolt up the pedal box, bolt in the steering wheel, and then bolt up the master cylinder for the brakes. That would be a real win. That would be a step in the right direction. That would make it a heck of a lot easier for me to move this thing in and out of the garage in the future when I need to, because I can just put one of the kids in the seat and have them steer. So I might just go ahead and do that. Try to get that done here and start working my way down the list. Let's get to work. What's up, YouTube? I wanted to bring you in here for a quick update on the Frankenstroke project, because we are making some progress here. First of all, here at the front end, won't be needing that anymore. If you're not familiar with these trucks, that laughably insufficient hunk of junk is the automatic transmission cooler. also run the automatic transmission fluid on most of these through the radiator, so you've got a water cooler, but you've also got that guy to try and get your temperatures down, which just isn't really big enough if you're working on them hard. So we won't be needing that anymore because this truck is going to 5-speed. Some other things, I got the grill pulled off here because that's not going to work for a hood latch. Looks like that latch cable is broken, so we'll have to replace that. Get our hood latch fixed up. I'm going to swap out this AC condenser because some little mud dauber wasp thought that was a good place to call home. And even if I try and dig that out, I'm never going to get it clean enough that it really ought to go back together that way. So I've got another AC condenser. It's just 4 bolts and the tube connection there. We'll go ahead and pull that guy out. It looks a little worse for the wear anyway. So we'll swap that out, put a different one in there. Aside from that, we've got the brakes plumbed. I've got the master cylinder bolted in. Probably saw in the last video, we've got steering and all 3 pedals now. I also went ahead and converted the gauge cluster to a manual transmission, so you don't see the little shift indicator there anymore. Got the bezel put in, fuel selector valve. Probably won't go any farther than that right now, just until we get this thing fired up and we see whether we've got any other wiring that needs to be addressed, or see how the backlights work on those gauges. It's not uncommon for a bunch of those to be burned out. If anybody sees this and has a switch bezel for a crew cab laying around, even if it's not in pristine shape, hit me up in the comments down below. I am looking for something. I know there's a company out there that's making a reproduction, but they're rather spendy, so if you've got a better solution than that, let me know. What else? I got the front brakes all plumbed and bled. In the process of bleeding those and kind of pumping things up and testing them, I found a bad spot in the rear brake line, so I've got it all pulled out here. I've got some new line on order. I didn't have quite enough stock here to do it all in one piece, and I didn't want to splice it, so we've got that old rear hose replaced. Got the new one installed there. I've got a new piece of line on the crossover on the rear axle here. This is copper nickel brake line. I use that instead of steel. It's a heck of a lot easier to work with. It is much more corrosion resistant, and it's only a little bit more expensive. So that's what I've been using as of late. So the back end here is ready. I just need to get that line replaced, and we should have 4 wheels worth of brakes. I'm not sure what the brakes are like on this axle. This rear axle was the one that was under the truck before, so I know the ones in the front work. I'm not sure about the rears, but we'll get them hooked up here, and at least we'll have some brakes for moving this thing around. Still have to do shocks back here. Still have a bunch of other little odds and ends back here for the sway bar. Lots of little things, but as you can see from the list here, I've marked off just slightly more things than I've added. So we're getting close. I want to do these 3 things if I can before I roll this thing out of here, and then I think I'm ready to get a motor up here. We'll get a motor pulled up here out of the storeroom down in the shed. I've got a good one in mind that I know is a good running engine. It was in crew cab that I parted out here about 1.5 years ago. I think it was a 97. So had some miles on it, but it ran nice. So I think I'm going to pull that thing out here. We'll go over it and make sure that everything is copacetic. There's a couple of things I like to look at closely before I go ahead and put them into a truck. Number one, I want to make sure that the up pipe gaskets are not leaking. I may just go ahead and replace those while it's easy to do. And I think I'm going to put new glow plugs in that motor. Again, just because I ordered some with the thought in mind that I go ahead and put them in this truck before I put it together. I want it to be reliable for the person who buys it. I also did make the decision to go ahead and relocate that shock mount, put it where it was supposed to be. It was actually bolted through this big oval hole, had a big ugly washer on the inside, and it's actually in its proper location there now. It's actually supposed to be mounted forward of that oval hole. So this thing's got a bunch of holes drilled in it up here that don't really need to be there. I'm not too terribly worried about it though, so I don't think I'm going to bother to weld them shut and get it ground and cleaned up. Got that done. I've got the fender gap here somewhat resolved. You can see the paint's all chewed up because the door and the fender were getting together, but it clears now, so that's progress. A few have commented that I ought to go ahead and take the time and paint the frame up on this thing while it's at this stage. I don't know. I would have to spend a bunch of time doing frame prep, getting this thing cleaned up and scraped down and degreased and everything else. And I'm not sure that I want to spend that much time on what is destined to be a work truck. As you can see, the body is not perfect. It's solid, but it's beat up. A pretty good dent in the roof over there on the passenger side. There's another dent here. Scraped up there. There's dings in the doors. And there's not a straight panel on this thing, so it's not destined to become a show truck. It's going to be a workhorse for somebody. So I don't think I'm going to take the time to clean up and paint the frame. Sure, I could run down and get some tractor paint or get some Pour 15 and blow it on here, and it would look nice for a while. But without spending the time to do the prep properly, it's just not going to last. And it would be time and effort ultimately wasted. So I don't think I'm going to take the time to do it. I did debate about it for a while, but I don't think I'm going to. So a few things I need to do here yet before I'm ready to swing an engine in. I want to swap out these headlights. The holes in the back of them are stripped out so that the headlights don't lock in properly. This one's not quite right anyway. So we'll swap those out with a couple that I've got off the shelf down there, just so we've got a usable set of headlight lenses in there. So I'll get that done. We'll get the bulbs and wiring all put back together here before I drop batteries in it. It's kind of hard to reach all of that once you've got the batteries in place. Need to get a couple of batteries. I need to replace the cord for the block heater. Somebody cut it off or drove away with it plugged in or something and it's ripped off. Need to do that hood latch. I'm probably going to do some work on this core support. Get this guy cleaned up and get that welded up just to make it solid again. I don't need it to be pretty, it just needs to be functional. Swap out the AC accumulator or condenser, and then I think we're going to be ready to swing a motor into this thing. So look for that to happen here soon. Yeah, body on this thing's rough. So look for that to happen here soon. I'm hoping to get the motor into this thing sooner than later. I've got 2 or 3 things that I want to do to this for sure before I roll it out of the shop and bring that engine in here. The concrete in here is all busted up, so it's kind of rough rolling a hoist, an engine hoist, or a motor stand around in here. So I end up probably with the back end of this thing hanging out the door in order to do it, just so I've got room to move and I can kind of center it on solid concrete. So I want to get as much done as I can before we get to that point, but I'm hoping here in the not too distant future that we'll be dropping an engine, a transmission, and a transfer case into this thing, and be ready to see if it'll make some smoke. So that's an update for right now. I'm going to keep pecking away at this thing, try to get some of these little items done, and try to keep building on our progress. We've kind of got things in motion here again, so try to keep that flywheel effect going and make some headway on this thing while we can. That's it for now. Alright guys, time for an update. As you can tell, the garage is once again empty, and that is because I had to bring some things in. It's time, or it's close to time. So this motor has been in a crate down in my shed for about a year. Crazy, it's got mold growing on it. It's kind of weird. But this is an engine out of a 97 F350. It's got some miles on it, 372,000. But, man, it just ran really good. This is a truck that I actually drove home here a few years ago. If you've been following the channel for a while, you probably remember that video. It was a green crew cab that had been sideswiped pretty badly, and it was pretty messed up. But I drove it home. The engine ran really well. Drove nice. Drove it in the drive and then parted it out. So I pulled the thing apart and did a compression test on it before we crated it up, and those were the numbers. So I had a low of 320 and a high of 360. So just about a 10% tolerance there. It's more like 15, but in my experience, that's not really uncommon with these trucks. And those are good numbers. Those are actually better numbers than the ones for my crew cab that's down in the shed, and it runs just fine. So I wanted to bring this thing up here today. We got most of our to-do list taken care of. Got my brake lines ran. Got just about everything ready to go in the engine compartment there. And I'm just about ready to drop a motor in that thing. So we've got, of course, to change over the flywheel and clutch. That's the one that was out of the plow truck. Put that on there and take the flex plate off. That was an automatic transmission truck that just came out of, obviously. So we're going to make that swap. And gosh, I tell you, we'll put some glow plugs in this thing, and I think it'll be about time to swing it into place. I was concerned that the up pipe gaskets may have been leaking on this thing, but man, they're just clean. There's no soot on them at all, so I'm not going to worry about it. We're going to do glow plugs, put the clutch on, and then I think we'll be ready to drop this thing into the truck. So just figured I'd bring you in here, show you the progress. It's coming, slow but sure. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, just two quick items of note here. As I said, this engine was out of an automatic transmission truck, and we're putting it into a truck that we intend to back with a ZF 5-speed. So we'll be going from that flex plate to this solid disc clutch, single mass. And when you make that transition, when you do a trans swap and you go to a manual transmission, you have to take out this spacer. This spacer goes on the back of the crank and adjusts the spacing for that flex plate. It sits in here like this. So when you make the swap, take that guy out. And if you're going from a manual to an automatic transmission, know that you're going to need that spacer. What is that, about an inch thick? You're going to need it. Otherwise, you'll have all kinds of problems. The other thing that I wanted to note here, how greasy the back end of this engine is. And that is not a leak from the rear main seal. A lot of times you'll hear a complaint that guys have got a 7.3 that's leaking from the rear main seal. And I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but it doesn't happen very often. What happens more often than not is you've got a leak up here in the valley someplace, and it runs down through here. So obviously, and you can see how wet and greasy that is, 4 or 5 inches above the rear main seal. That's not a leak from the rear main. So if you've got fluids dripping out of the inspection cover for your transmission, or running down the back of the pan and dripping onto the ground, look in the valley. It's probably a fuel leak or an oil leak from the turbo pedestal, and it's just running down the back side of the engine and dripping out. It's not very likely that it is your rear main. Even if it looks like oil, a lot of times it's just fuel that's picked up enough grease and grit and grime and oil and junk out of the valley there that it looks like oil by the time it drips on the ground. So just a couple little tips. I'm going to get back to work here and get this flywheel bolted up. All right, we've got the flywheel on and the bolts torqued to 89 foot-pounds. We're ready to go ahead and put the clutch disc and the pressure plate on. If you're doing one of these jobs, do yourself a favor and buy yourself one of these 7.3 liter clutch alignment tools. It will pay for itself in the headaches it saves you the first time you use it. So the way that this guy works is it goes into the clutch disc, and then you stick it into the pilot bushing, and that aligns everything. As you can see, you would be guessing at getting all of that stuff lined up without this tool. And when you're laying on your back underneath the truck and trying to stab a transmission, that is not the time when I have the patience to be guessing. Maybe you do. If you do, you're a better man than I am. But that is not the time when I want to make sure that I want to have questions about whether or not it's right. So getting one of these tools, they aren't very expensive. I think they're less than $10, so saves a lot of headaches. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and bolt the pressure plate up here, and we will torque those bolts to 25 foot-pounds, the pressure plate bolts. All right, there we go. Clutch and flywheel are installed, and we are just about ready to start thinking about putting that thing in the truck. I've got to move some battery cables and things, and as I said, I want to do glow plugs in this guy before we put it in the engine bay. Just be a whole lot easier to do it right now, and kind of in favor of doing things when they're simple. So probably go ahead and get that taken care of. Pull some hoses off of here, make sure we've got all the right hoses in all the right places, and be ready to swing this thing in. But it is New Year's Eve 2020, and it's time for dinner. So I'm going to call it quits for tonight. We'll see if I can get on this for a while tomorrow and keep the progress going. I'm getting close to dropping this thing in. So that's it for now. Alright guys, well, Happy New Year. Here's hoping that 2021 is better for you all than 2020 was. I'm starting it off with a little bit of progress. I was able to get things squared away and got some help. My dad was kind enough to come over for a little while and provide an extra set of hands, help us get this motor swung. So got it put into place. I did pull the hood off in order to do that. It's just A lot easier with the hood off, especially if you got the core support in. You almost have to take the hood off to be able to get the motor up high enough to swing it in. I also took the pressure plate back off. I wasn't thinking when I bolted it up that I was going to be tight for space, so I had to take the pressure plate off. It just barely fit with the flywheel on. I was really hoping I wouldn't have to retorque all those flywheel bolts underneath the truck, and we were able to get it swung into place. So motor's in, motor mounts are tightened down. I've rolled it back outside here. It's pretty crappy weather here. It's about 35 degrees and it's been raining all day, so had some ice all over the side of the truck, and I get enough water in this garage without having the truck melt everything off of it inside, so just pushed it back outside. Figured I'd let it would melt off and drip outside instead of inside. So making progress. I think the next thing will be to straighten out the wiring here. I've got 2 sets of battery cables in here right now. Obviously I don't need those, so I'll unhook the stuff that's on the chassis and get them out of the way. Start connecting things for the wiring on the motor. Probably go ahead and drop the radiator into place. I may go ahead and put the transmission in first. The engine hangs at kind of a funny angle without the back support of having the transmission sit on the mount back there. It's kind of tipped back at the back. I don't know if that'd be enough to cause me clearance issues between the fan and the radiator when I start putting things back together or not. But at this point, there's a lot of progress to be made. That's a big hurdle to get across to get the motor swung. So it's down in the chassis. That's a big step forward. Got another pile of work to do. I need to start filling out my list again. So that's it for now. Once again, Happy New Year. I hope this finds your family well, and that 2021 is a blessed year for you. If you're interested in watching the rest of this build, please do subscribe to the channel. There's much more to come on this. Transmission, transfer case, drive shafts, wiring, all the plumbing up in the front here. And we should be able to get some batteries in this thing and see if it'll come to life. So I'm excited to have made it this far in this amount of time here the last few days, and looking forward to making some more progress. Thanks for watching.